Good evening, everyone. I'm Carol Isman, Chair of the Dover Planning Board. This is our meeting of September 8th with one agenda item, which will be the public hearing for the MBTA Communities Act. Following the guidance of the Commonwealth back in 2023, this meeting is being conducted by Zoom. And you can get the Zoom link from the agenda on the Dover calendar webpage. It is also being recorded. So I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:02 and take a roll call vote. Jody Shue.
Here.
Val Lynn.
Here.
Bill Motley.
Here.
And I don't believe Katie is here yet. Okay. But we do have
Kate, I tried to promote her and she declined.
Okay. Katie did?
Well,
It's just Kate.
There she is.
Did I miss her?
Wait, we just got a message from her. Hold on.
Oh, she's raised her hand.
Why don't I see her?
I think it's just under Kate, Melissa.
Oh yeah, I tried it. Okay, let me try again.
Okay.
She in? I also hear some background noise. Well, Melissa, why don't you work on that while I start the meeting? So,
Oh no, that was a different Kate. So now Kate's here.
okay, I see Kate Williams is now in. Yep.
And so is Kate Haviland.
Oh, Kate Williams.
So Kate Haviland, who just shows up as Kate Melissa, can go back as a.
Yep, my bad.
Well, it's not your bad.
thanks,
That's what I told you to do. It's the only Kate I saw.
So if I remove, I know, I thought, sorry, I'm not too great at Zoom. That's okay.
I guess we're all in the same boat.
I can't, if I remove her, she won't be able to rejoin the webinar. Hold on, let me try to, maybe Chris, if you can, something I'm
Yeah,
missing.
I got it. I'm gonna change Kate back to attendee.
Okay, so we'll have
Thank
Chris work on that and then we'll continue on with the meeting because we now have everybody on.
Okay, awesome.
So the first agenda item at our planning board meetings is always citizen comments. We have about 5 minutes scheduled for any citizen who would like to make a comment to the planning board on something totally unrelated to the agenda item. So if there's any attendee tonight who has something to say to the planning board that is not related to the MBTA Communities Act, you could raise your hand now. I don't see anyone. Do you?
I
Anyone
do
else?
see James Stewart has raised his hand.
Oh, well, James Stewart.
I think that's James. Jay.
Oh,
James.
there. Oh, up there under
Yeah.
J. James,
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
we can. Thank you.
Thank you guys for having this meeting. I appreciate it. I think it would be helpful if you were to enable all the attendees of the meeting to be able to see who is here, because I believe you guys can see all of the attendees, but as an attendee, I can't tell if I'm the only one who is not a member or a selectman. I don't expect that to happen tonight, but I think it should be a protocol for going forward.
Thank you, James, for that comment. It's not a new one at any board or committee in Dover about these webinars, so understand your concern. Thank you.
So I'm just spitting in the wind. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? I don't see anyone else now.
Looks like Nina.
Carol,
Oh.
quick question. Is it only the panelists that can see the, have the participant button?
No, they should.
Everybody should be able to.
Okay, so that should answer.
No.
So sorry,
No?
so only the panelists can see the list of attendees.
Oh,
That is
Okay,
that is
that was
accurate.
my
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Okay, so no further citizen comments?
Yeah,
So-
one second, Carol. I see that Wendy has raised her hand.
Yes, thank you. I just want to chime in that I agree with James, I think, who made the comment that we should be able to see each other in a gallery view or whatever, because it engenders conversation among residents. If we see each other at the meeting about something or make comments about something, it will help the community talk about things. So I think it's a really good idea. So
Okay,
putting in my 2 cents.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
Okay, so now, um,
Every week.
I hear some background noise.
I've muted everyone, Carol.
Okay, very good then. So, we've gone through the citizen comments, and now we're going to enter into the main part of the meeting, which is the public hearing. So I would like to have a motion to open the public hearing.
Carol, I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing for this meeting on September 8th, 2025.
Thank you,
second
Jody.
that
Do I hear a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Kate. So this public hearing has been advertised as required by Mass General Law in the newspaper. If anybody would like me to read the notice, I will. Otherwise, we'll go right to the presentations.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, we just need a vote to open the hearing.
Oh, sorry. Yep. So roll call vote. Jody,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
you're moving. Katie,
Yes,
Bill,
I saw Bill's mouth move,
Yep.
but I didn't hear him.
and
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
now
now
we
I
can
can,
hear you,
yeah.
okay.
It shows I'm off mute, so I'm just wondering why. What?
Okay.
Yeah.
Now
Oh,
we
you
hear
have to. You control that.
Yep,
Okay.
now we can hear you.
Thank you.
So the public meeting is now open. So let me just go through what the format is for the public hearing. We're going to have a presentation made by the MBTA Communities Act team, which I will introduce in just a moment. They will go through their slides, make the presentation in its completeness, and then we will open up the public hearing to a comment. And there will be 2 ways for you all to comment. We look forward to those questions as well. One will be through the Q&A function, and the other will be through raising your hand. You, of course, during the presentation can start putting your questions into the Q&A, and we will address them as in the order in which we received them. And we'll go through that process again, just explaining it at the end of the presentation as well. We do ask that you identify yourself by name and address. So if you start to put in your Q&As during the presentation, please let us know who you are and where you live. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to the team. Jody Shu is Vice Chair of the Planning Board and the project leader for the last 2.5 years on the MBTA Communities Act. Melissa Santucci Rosie is our town planner. She started it in Dover in July and is full steam ahead with MBTA. Robin Hunter is Chair of the Board of Selectmen, and Nina Pickering Cook is our town council. And they will be presenting and available for questions and answers as well. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jody.
Thank you, Carol. I appreciate that. I guess because we're introducing ourselves, Jody Shu. I live at 10 Main Street, and as Carol said, I'm the vice chair of the planning board, and I've been sort of living and breathing all things MBTA Communities Act for a couple of years, and looking forward to this evening. Melissa, if you could bring up our slides. Great. Thank you. So the next slide. Okay, great. I'm just going to make this so I can see it at the right size. Okay. So our agenda is here before us tonight. We're going to try to walk through all 8 agenda items and do that as clearly, as simply, and as quickly as we can so we can get to the public testimony piece of the puzzle, which is bullet number 7. You'll see that we're going to try to do a quick overview of some key facts that everybody needs to understand about the MBTA Communities Act so that we can all be on the same page. I'm going to ask Robin Hunter to walk us through Dover's financial risks and responsibilities, and we have our town council, Nina Pickering Cook, here with us tonight to address and answer any questions about legal risks and responsibilities for the town, which have been weighing heavily on all of our minds over the last couple of years. I'll walk you through our path to implementation of this law, what we've done, where we've been, how we got here, and I'll try to do that as succinctly as possible because we've done that a couple of times in public information sessions, which are available on our MBTA webpage. And then I'm going to hand it over to our town planner, Melissa Santucci-Rossi, to talk us through the proposed overlay district itself and the accompanying text of the zoning bylaw that we are proposing and that we will hopefully be bringing to a vote at town meeting on September 29th. We'll talk a little bit about voting implications at that special town meeting. We'll review some important upcoming dates over the coming weeks, and then we'll get to what I said, the public testimony piece of the puzzle. So Melissa, next slide. Thank you. So some facts about this act. This is the MBTA Communities Act, which many of you will know already was signed into law by Charlie Baker and his administration in 2021. The law applies to 177 communities across the state. Of the 351 cities and towns in the Commonwealth, Dover is one of them. The act requires that the town of Dover and the other 177 communities develop and implement zoning, but not construction, for multifamily housing by right near transit. The goal of the act is to foster the development of more housing near transit across the Commonwealth. Really important to understand that local control is a really important component of this law. All boards, committees, and commissions in the town of Dover maintain regulatory control about any potential, possible, imaginary future development in the overlay district that is being proposed. And we'll talk a little bit more specifically about what that means. Next slide, please. Here are some more facts that we really want everybody to understand. Challenging the law. So as you probably know, if you've been watching the news and reading the Boston Globe, there have been towns that have challenged this law. Those lawsuits are extraordinarily costly for those communities, and every single one has failed. There is not an opt-out at this point for the MBTA Communities Act. Towns are legally mandated to follow this law. And importantly, the planning board is by statute responsible for bringing a district for compliance and an accompanying change to our zoning bylaw to a town meeting for vote. So that's what we're here for tonight. It's our job to bring a proposed overlay district and accompanying text to town meeting, and we're here to talk about what that looks like. If Dover doesn't comply, that will entail the loss of state grants. And the loss of state grants are important for all of us because that translates literally to higher local taxes for Dover residents. So I'd like to hand the baton to Robin Hunter, who's going to walk us through a little bit about the financial implications of compliance or non-compliance with this law. And then I'll come back and continue to walk you through the presentation.
Thank you, Jody, and good evening, everybody. Just for your information, there are 54 attendees and 10 panelists this evening, and we're really glad that you chose to join us to learn more about this MBTA Communities Act. So what I would like to cover here is just put it into perspective for all of us as Dover taxpayers. And the way to do that is to convey to you what we stand to lose if we vote not to comply with the MBTA Communities Act. When we started this process, it was unclear exactly what the Commonwealth of Massachusetts would do. But in practice, being one of the last adopters, what we've learned is the Commonwealth, and the governor in particular, is serious when they say you will lose grants. And towns that have voted no have immediately lost grants. Many of you, I think, don't really understand the magnitude of grants that we get in Dover. Even though we are a wealthy community, we still qualify for grants. And on average, looking back at the last 5 fiscal years, we have secured approximately 1.3 million of grants annually. Some years it was 450, and other years it was 2 million. But these grants help offset the cost to taxpayers for infrastructure, equipment replacements, and we are very aggressive at going after these grants. We also have, fortunately, been notified that we have a $13 million earmark for the Center Street Bridge, and this will be for the replacement of the bridge. We have already received 2 million of that for engineering, and we believe that if we do not comply with the MBTA Communities Act, this grant will get taken away from us. In addition to not being able to get grants, the Commonwealth has made clear that towns that do not pass the MBTA Communities Act will lose priority for all future grants. So that means if we decide to fight it and then need to become compliant at a later date, we will be able to apply for grants, but Dover will not be prioritized to receive them. Next slide, please. So what do you stand to what will this cost you as a Dover taxpayer? So looking at our fiscal year 2026 budget, we did a back of the envelope calculation, and based upon the amount of funds appropriated, if we were not to receive approximately 1.3 million in grants, that would cost each taxpayer who has a median home value of 1.6 million, which is the median value for homes in Dover, $600 a year. So that means your tax bill would go up $600 per year. And keep in mind that these grants are for projects that are on our schedule to be replaced. These aren't nice to have items, these are need to have items. It is our responsibility to keep, to continue to invest in capital for the town. If we were to lose the $13 million, the earmark grant for the Center Street Bridge, which I'm not sure if many of you are aware, but that bridge has structural issues and does need to be replaced. Assuming a 20-year loan for this, for the 13 million over 20 years, each taxpayer would be assessed an additional $425 per year to their tax bill. In addition to that, what we have seen is legal fees will easily begin to cost $1 million. Keep in mind, this is a state law. The state wants towns to comply with the law. The only way to change this law is to go speak to your representatives on Beacon Hill. The Commonwealth will fight us. And we know the town of Milton has spent somewhere around $1 million on legal fees. And again, taxpayers need to foot that bill, and an additional $1 million in legal fees is an additional $475 annually to your tax bill. So a no vote really equals higher taxes and service cuts, because we will need to balance that for the citizens of Dover. Next slide, please. So somebody asked us, well, what's the downside of compliance in one of these meetings? And that was a really good question, and it got us thinking. And our answer here is there is no downside. You know, first of all, it's the law. So compliance will secure funding, our services, and lower tax rates. Non-compliance does the exact opposite. It will increase taxes because, again, the items we are using grants for are not nice to have. They're need to have items. It's to repair the infrastructure. It's to keep our roads in good conditions. These are the types of grants that will be taken away from us. So really, in our opinion, there is nothing to gain by resisting and everything to lose. So we do urge you to vote yes. And I'm turning it back over to you, Jody, I believe.
Thank you. And to help you sort of understand some other big picture considerations as you educate yourself about this initiative, here's a quick rundown of a few things that the MBTA Communities Act does not require of Dover. Most notably, the MBTA Communities Act does not require that multifamily housing be built in Dover, period. It is not a requirement to build, it's a requirement to zone. So that's the first thing to know. The second thing that I think is extraordinarily important to understand is that the MBTA Communities Act does not override or supersede Dover's existing regulations, bylaws, or rules. Things like rules about wetlands or septic systems or water requirements. This is not 40B. This is totally different. And though the control of those issues remain in the hands of Dover's boards, commissions, and other entities in town. It also does not remove or change underlying zoning in the proposed overlay district. And what that means, really in a nutshell, is that the underlying zoning that is currently in place in the proposed district remains in force. Nothing has to change. It's just an added option that developers might be able to take advantage of at some future date by right. It does not mean that they get to trample on our local rules and our local regulations. It just means that they might not need a variance to do so at some future date. It also does not force property owners to do anything at all. It doesn't mean anyone has to sell their property, build anything, or take any action whatsoever, period. It also, and this is important, does not require the town of Dover to design, pay for, or approve any new infrastructure that might be required at some future date for development in the overlay district. Things like septic systems or water access. There is no requirement whatsoever that Dover approve or design or pay for any of that infrastructure now or at any time in the future. Next slide, please. On the other hand, the MBTA Communities Act does enable some things that are important also to be aware of. It does allow Dover, not developers, to decide where to locate the overlay district where multifamily housing might at some point be allowable by right. So you might be familiar with 40B, where we act as a town in response to developers purchasing property and coming in and trying to develop affordable housing. This is not the same. We decide where the one district is located. It also, notably, allows us to limit the overlay district to one location. It's not up to developers to determine what they have purchased and what they might develop. We get to decide where it's possible. And then, as I've said, it does maintain Dover's local regulatory oversight of any multifamily development within that specific overlay district, things like septic, water, and other things that we all care about. Next slide, please. So with that shared understanding, and we can take questions on any of those at the end of the presentation, what exactly, or very specifically, does Dover need to do? And what have we been working on? There are three things that we have to do in order to be compliant with this law. The first is that we have to update our zoning map to show a location of a multifamily overlay district. That is literally just means we have to select a district, select a location to be zoned for MBTA compliance. The second thing we have to do is update our zoning bylaw, the literal text of the zoning bylaw, and do so in a way that allows multifamily housing by right. And again, that just means without a variance or a special permit in that specific overlay district. And then we have to come together as a town at a special town meeting. It's going to be held on September 29th and approve both of those changes. That's what we have to do, those specific three things. We don't have to build anything. We don't have to implement any infrastructure changes. We don't have to change other rules in our zoning bylaw. That's what we have to do. Next slide, please. And the state has given us a very specific roadmap. So the requirements for compliance are pretty crystal clear for us. And it really is a very prescribed process. These requirements are given to us by the state because we are considered a small adjacent town. And as you can see here on this chart, they're pretty specific. We need to allow for, but not require that it be built, a minimum of 102 units of multifamily housing just in that overlay district. Doesn't have to be built, just have to allow for it. We have to have a minimum gross density of 15 units per acre, which is a zoning and development description that Melissa can help us understand a little bit later on in the presentation, but it just kind of gives us a guideline. We have no minimum size for our district that's required for Dover. Other bigger towns have to meet size requirements, but we don't, so that's great. It can go anywhere within our town's geographic borders, so that's also gives us flexibility. But we do need to be in compliance by December 31st of this year. Thus, the special town meeting on September 29th. Next slide. So what have we been up to? A lot, as it turns out. It's been going back a few years here since before 2023, but there have been several steps on this path to implementation that have required approval by the Board of Selectmen, which we obtained in 2023. And we've really walked through a multi-step process to get us to this evening and to this fall and to this really important decision for voters here in town. The first step that we had to start with as a planning board was to say, okay, where could this go? If we had to allow multifamily housing somewhere in Dover, where should we start? Where should we begin in the quest to figure out where that might be well placed? We made the decision along with the Housing Task Force and other members of town leadership to determine a single location for an overlay district. There are some rules and regulations that make it more complicated, much more complicated for us to spread it out throughout town. And so we made the decision for simplicity's sake that we were going to pick one location in town and limit development of multifamily housing to that one location. We also made a decision that we should start by looking at areas where development was pre-existing. We know that this is an overlay district. We know that multifamily housing does not actually have to be built. We have to zone for it. So we figured, let's just look at some places where we already have development and we don't have to put it on empty land. So let's see what we got. We also thought, well, let's look at undeveloped property because we figured we should probably just have a little bit of a mix. And we looked at how we could identify some undeveloped property where density of multifamily housing would be less likely or unlikely to disturb some residential neighborhoods. That was on our mind. We wanted to factor in some proximity to town services, to transportation, and we also obviously wanted to meet those state compliance criteria that I outlined a couple of slides ago. And that's really where we started. Like, how could we do this in a logical fashion that would help us hone in on what our options are here in Dover? Also really important to know that we knew we couldn't put it on town land because that's not allowable by state law. And we also knew that we couldn't put it on conservation land. So there were lots of areas around town that like went out the window. As we started to just begin to look at this. The second step of the process was to establish what are called dimensional requirements. Those are things like, how tall could the buildings be? What would the setbacks look like? What would the density look like? And we had to establish some dimensional requirements in order to figure out if some of the places we were imagining this might work would actually work, because otherwise we were kind of operating in a vacuum. So we knew, well, actually, our consultant that we hired to help us with this process reminded us that in 1990, the town of Dover had approved a multifamily residence district at a town meeting in 1990. And we thought, okay, well, that's a good place to start. That district, which is sort of a paper district, doesn't actually exist. The rules and regulations around that might be a good place for us to start. So let's model some of those dimensional requirements around what has already been approved at a town meeting. Next slide, please. And from here, we came up with a total of 5 initial locations. You can see them here on the left column: County Court, the pastures at Dover, Dover Farms, the Junction Street property, which is the piece of land that had been identified for us over by the middle school, high school complex, and the Meadows. And we came up with these 5 locations using the frameworks that I outlined on the previous page. And we asked our consultant to plug those locations into the state's compliance model, which is really a souped up Excel spreadsheet, which factors in things like wetlands and all sorts of other components to literally spit out, yes, this area would work, no, this area wouldn't work. And it's a complicated process that our consultant led us through. And from it, we found that of the 5 locations we had initially identified, 2 of them just were non-starters for different reasons. The pastures at Dover, for example, didn't get us to the 102 units required. You can see here that it's 81, and nor did Dover Farm. So we knew we couldn't even begin to work with those. And then we were left with 3: County Court, Junction Street, and the Meadows. Next slide, please. So we had 3 locations that we were sort of noodling around, and we were really thinking hard at the planning board and in the housing task force and in conversations to think about how could we really hit what I like to think about as our sweet spot. We need to meet the compliance criteria so that we can maintain our access to funding and reduce any legal liability for the town and avoid residential tax hikes in association with loss of state grants. But also, how could we do this in such a way that was very respectful of what we all value about Dover? Its rural character, its charm, the kinds of things that, you know, I've lived here for 20 something years, and many of you have lived here far longer than that. And how do we find that sweet spot? We first created a website in 2024 dedicated to all things MBTA Communities Act, because we knew that this was going to need a lot of citizen engagement and understanding in order for us to proceed together towards a solution that worked for this town. So the website, I hope you've all had a chance to look at on the town's website. It's chock full of information and historical information to really walk you through our very earnest efforts to try to do this well for the town and for the citizens of Dover. We met with the Council on Aging. We sent certified notices to owners of properties in all of the 3 potential overlay locations. We held public information sessions on Zoom in March and April of 2025. We fielded a community survey that was broadcast throughout all Dover's communication channels and yielded, I think, Melissa might correct me on this, upwards of 175 submissions from residents of Dover, giving us their feedback regarding these 3 locations. And we also fielded feedback in those information sessions in March and April through pop polling on those Zoom information sessions. We've been updating and improving the town website almost monthly as we continue to evolve in this process. We held a meeting with owners and tenants of the County Court condominium. We learned from our information sessions and our survey that county court was far and away the preferred choice from those residents who responded to those various methods of intake. And now tonight we're here at our public hearing, and you should be seeing in your mailbox fairly soon an executive summary of all of this key information that will be arriving to your homes in the coming days. Next slide, please. I'm going to hand it off here to Melissa Santucci Rossi, who is our town planner. We're delighted to have her in Dover. She started with us this summer, and she has a ton of experience working with other communities on MBTA compliance, and will walk us through the overlay district and also the zoning bylaw that we are proposing. So Melissa, off to you.
Thank you, Jody. And as you can see, we have a slide here for viewing that highlights and depicts an aerial view of the overlay district. This particular area is known as the County Court Condominium, and it is all the units and all of this land are categorized with Tisdale Drive addresses. Just for technical purposes, this is located on map 25, and there are 56 parcels in total, each representing one of the condominium units. And the proposed overlay district is just shy of 10 acres. So again, you can see 109 sort of in the south of the photo, which is known as County Street, and then the parcel in light blue, which is a fairly deep, long, and somewhat narrow parcel of land. And as Jody had mentioned, this particular location prevailed in all methods of resident input and survey, and essentially was chosen by the community based on the pop-up polling and the survey work. So again, Tisdale Drive, County Court, proposed overlay district. In addition to the overlay district, we have the zoning bylaw, which is the text that describes what can be done in the district, how it can be done, and any parameters that the planning board would like to place on any development that will be placed in this overlay district, which will allow multifamily housing by right. So this was developed in collaboration with our technical consultant, Horsley Witten, town planner, and our legal counsel. As noted earlier, it was modeled off of our existing multifamily zoning, which is section 185-42. And luckily, being in the last round of MBTA communities, there were a lot of examples, past practice, and bylaws that were already on the books that Dover used to create their proposed overlay district. One of the main components of the text in the zoning bylaw, and this was filed with the Board of Selectmen on July 15th, 2025, is the dimensional criteria, which informs people of lot sizes, how much frontage needs to be had, lot coverage, setback, separation between buildings. So how would any particular building be located on this particular overlay district, where it would need to be, how big it could be, how tall it could be. So we refer to these as the dimensional criteria, and those are all contained within the zoning bylaw as well. Some other key features of the zoning bylaw is it only applies if a property owner chooses to use the overlay. So what that means is the existing zoning stays in place, and if and when someone decides they want to exercise their rights within the overlay, that's when it would kick in, and the criteria and the maps and the dimensional criteria would all be applicable in that particular scenario. It also includes some clear definitions relative to this particular section, definitions about open space, lot coverage, things that would inform anybody that would be using or exercising the overlay, what particular terms within that section actually mean. Allows multifamily by right and with site plan review, which means there are no other discretionary zoning permits required. They would be subject to the site plan review process that the planning board currently undertakes on several other projects. And all of the criteria in the site plan review section would be evaluated against a particular project. There are also standards for landscaping, access, site design, and lighting. And again, things that would describe and indicate and regulate how these particular features of a development would be laid out in this overlay district. It also includes 2 to 2.5 parking spaces per unit. The planning board took into effect guest parking if that was going to be needed. And also our particular bylaw does not require any affordable units. This next slide here talks about some revisions that we're going to be, or that we're putting forward to the planning board for review and consideration. So one of the things that I've done since arriving here in Dover in July is really going through the text with a fine-tooth comb, fresh set of eyes, and identifying some things to the planning board and to the community that will just strengthen this overlay district and make it, I would say, as conservative as possible. So one of the things, and I think one of the highlights of the revisions is right now, as put forward, there is no density cap per unit in the bylaw. So looking at the compliance model and understanding that we need to be at least 15 units an acre, we have retested the model, and 16 units per acre works and gets us at that over 15 units per acre density. So recommendation to institute a units per acre cap, and that would be 16. The second thing, again, going through this bylaw, looking at the current bylaw, in Dover, we, in our dimensional requirements for all the zoning districts, we do not regulate open space. We only regulate lot coverage. So looking to be consistent and looking to be conservative, we're going to be removing the open space requirement at 40%. The lot coverage requirement will stay at 25%. And how that particular ratio works is the rest of the site, which would be 75%, by default is implied as the open space requirement. So again, looking to be consistent, looking to have dimensional criteria and bylaws that line up with things that are on the books here in Dover. Again, looking at the definitions, the current definition for open space includes the word contiguous in front of undeveloped land within a parcel boundary. Again, taking a look at that, we would count all open space. It doesn't by definition need to be contiguous. It would just need to be pervious and undeveloped landscaped grass, nothing that is impervious. So looking to remove the word contiguous, which would render the definition to allow all undeveloped land within the parcel boundary to count in the open space requirements. In the last provision, there was a comment. The town of Dover has gone through a pre-adoption review with the state. The entity that is responsible for MBTA communities, which is EOHLC. And also the Attorney General, whose responsibility is to review all bylaws that are voted on in towns by town meeting. One of the comments that had come back from EOHLC was you have some other sections in your bylaw that imply special permits. The particular one that they highlighted, and we did a deep dive through the ordinance bylaw as well to make sure there was nothing else, was one about earth removal material, and that currently requires a special permit. So we cured that by simply making an exemption. If you are working in the overlay district and you're building multifamily housing by right, any material that's removed from the site would be reviewed in that site plan context. It would not require additional zoning permits in the form of a special permit. And I will hand it back over to Jody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Melissa. Okay, so looking ahead to our special town meeting on September 29th. We urge residents to vote yes for the passage of this article. And with a yes vote, the new zoning bylaw, which will be 18550, and the accompanying overlay district map will be enacted in Dover. It means that Dover would be in compliance with the state law and our access to grant funding would be maintained. And also that legal peril and the associated cost for taxpayers to defend ourselves legally would be avoided. If, on the other hand, residents of Dover vote no and the article fails, Dover will immediately be deemed as not in compliance with the law if we do not find ourselves back to another special town meeting before December 31st, 2025. So we'll have to keep working on this. Our access to state grant funding will be denied as of December 31st. If we are not in compliance, we'll be in legal jeopardy, and the planning board will go back to the drawing board and resume our efforts to figure out how to achieve compliance with the law. So this doesn't go away. It's not a one and done. We'll be back in other ways if that was the case, but we do urge your consideration for a yes vote at the special town meeting. Next slide, please. Here are some upcoming dates that we want everybody to be aware of. You should begin to see in your mailboxes by September 12th, thereabouts, a mailing of an executive summary that lays out really important key information about our compliance efforts and this zoning bylaw update in the overlay district. We urge you to read it, tell your friends to read it, and to educate yourself so that you can come to town meeting prepared to make a really informed decision about this crucial vote for our community. We'll be at Dover Days on the 13th with information in an MBTA tent. So we urge you to come find Melissa. She's got a lot of answers. She knows a lot about this, and she will be happy to answer your questions. And then most importantly, please come and tell your friends to come and everybody you know in your neighborhood to come to a special town meeting at Mudge Auditorium at the Dover Sherburne High School Complex, Middle School, High School Complex on September 29th at 7 o'clock, where we will present this information to the citizens of Dover and a vote will be taken. So we urge your attendance at that important meeting. So Carol, back to you for the public testimony component of this meeting.
Okay, well, thank you, Jody. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Robin. I hope you all found this very informative. We're going to have two ways to take public testimony, as I mentioned earlier. So just to recap those, one is to use the Q&A function, which I have seen that some of you have already started to use, and we've been putting in some answers as well, and I'll be going through those. So please feel free to start adding to the Q&A function, and then you can also raise your hand. And if you raise your hand, please make sure that you identify yourselves by name and location. So with that, I am going to just go through some of the questions that were asked during the presentation. I should note that we had, we're a little fewer right now, but just a few minutes ago, we had 69 additional attendees, which is a wonderful representation of the town. So thank you all again for coming and participating in this. The first question was, how does a potential 40B development in this overlay play out? This seems to be a big fear. So the proposed overlay district that is chapter 40B off of Tisdale. So it's not within the current district. The current district is only the county court condominium complex, which is already a 40B development. The additional project that's in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals, commonly known as Tisdale 2, has no relationship to this district. Then we had a question, can't a 40B avoid some of the issues around rules, wetlands, water, etc., or does something like water and septic still overrule? So that's one of the main differences between 40B and an MBTA Communities Act. And I'm thinking, Melissa, it might be a good time to put up that slide that we have on the differences between 40B and MBTA. It's in the appendix. And then perhaps Jody, you can just go through those differences.
Sure.
Okay.
Not definitions.
Nope.
I think it's
It's chapter 40B versus
yeah, the
MB.
next one. That's it. Okay, great.
Yeah.
There are some key differences. There's lots of differences between Chapter 40B and the MBTA Communities Act, but it's confusing. And so it's a great question, and I love to try to clarify this one. First and foremost, 40B is a law that was passed with the intent and the purpose to increase affordable housing production. Affordable housing is a formulaic number, and it's really meant to increase affordable housing production across the Commonwealth. The MBTA Communities Act is not focused on affordable housing. It's focused on housing supply, any kind of housing supply, and particularly housing supply around transit, buses, MBTA commuter stations, etc. So that's like one key difference. Another one is location choice. In the MBTA communities world, we here in Dover and other communities around the Commonwealth have the opportunity as municipal entities to define and create overlay districts or districts where multifamily housing would be permissible by right, which just simply means not needing a variance or a special permit. That's really different from 40B development, which is developer driven, because developers can go into communities like Dover, and we all understand this. They come into Dover and they find an area and try to develop it for affordable housing, which allows the developer to circumvent many of our local controls because they're developing affordable housing and they're taking advantage of Chapter 40B itself. So that's a totally different scenario. This is not that. And then most notably, sort of what is by right and what is a comprehensive permit and how are those two things different? Comprehensive permits apply to 40B developments, those developer-driven initiatives. And as I said, allows developers to override our local bylaws, our local rules, regulations, streamlines all of that into a comprehensive permit through the Zoning Board of Appeals. And the Zoning Board of Appeals really has to follow state mandates in that process. And it's a process that we all watch in Dover, and our hands tend to be somewhat tied, and that's frustrating. With the MBTA Communities Act, there is in the overlay district no comprehensive permit or a need for developers to obtain complex zoning relief or approvals like special variances or special permits. But site plan review is still allowed by the planning board and all local boards, committees, commissions, everybody. Those rules and regulations remain in full force. So there's just much more local control in an MBTA communities overlay district. Hopefully that answers the question, but I'm happy to articulate more if that doesn't.
Thank you, Jody. We'll go to the next question, which is what would happen if Dover is not in compliance by end of December? So as we've discussed, state grants would be unavailable. Some might have to be returned. The planning board would need to address the reasons why we did not have a successful vote at town meeting and come back with another plan to present to the town, hopefully by December 31st, in which case, and we get a yes vote. But until we do, we have lost the funds. And then, of course, we would lose priority for future grants, as Robin had mentioned as well. And our town council tells us that like other towns that have tried to get through with non-compliance, we would probably also be sued by the state. And we have one other question here, which is, I thought that this MBTA law required housing to be able to be built near public transportation, such as trains. This plan does not do so, so are we still compliant? So there are 4 categories that in the MBTA Communities Act. Dover is in the small adjacent community category because we are small and we are adjacent to towns that actually have public transportation. So obviously we can't comply with being close to public transportation because we don't have any. The state did recognize that in the act. And that's why we will still be in compliance because our rules are a little bit different because we don't have any transportation available. So those are the questions that were first raised and were answered as we were going through the presentation. Now I'd like to get to the questions that have not yet been answered. Here we go. So as county court has existing condos, and there are 56 of them, would those need to be removed to enable new multifamily units? Or could additional units be built among the already existing condos? Who would like to take a pass at that one?
I'm happy to jump in, and Melissa can jump in as well. Nina Pickering Cook, Town Council. So this is something that is a source of confusion for folks, particularly where this proposed zone is being located in Dover. So what zoning does is it changes the uses that are allowed for the property. It does not say that anything, it does not dictate that anything actually has to be built. So as of right now, the entirety of the parcel in the overlay district is comprised of 56 condo units. Nothing needs to happen to those 56 condo units unless those condo unit owners want to sell. So the answer to what can happen there, or what happens to those unit owners in those condos, that's up to the people that own the property. It's no different than if this were sited on a parcel that had 10 single-family homes. Those single-family homeowners likewise would not be forced to do anything with their property. They could sell it to a developer to be developed for multifamily if they wanted to, but they don't have to. Here, it's a little bit more complicated for a developer because it is a condo development, and it's a common land owned by a condo association. So the development is more complicated than just buying individual single family lots, but the legal principle is the same. Where folks are asking if more condos can be built or more multifamily can be built on that lot. It depends on the, first of all, a developer acquiring the property, as well as what the underlying dimensional requirements require. So Melissa and Jody put up a chart that showed you how, the maximum height and the frontage and the setbacks, all of those things that our zoning bylaw typically requires of developments. If someone can develop more units within Tisdale, using those dimensional requirements or applying those dimensional requirements, then perhaps additional units could be built. But that's not clear that can be done unless some are removed.
Melissa, is there anything you'd like to add? Thank you, Nina.
Not at this time, Carol. Thank you, though. Very well said, Nina.
Okay. The next is as much a comment as a question. As a concerned citizen, you're meeting the planning board, is planning to designate one part of town effectively as the quote, low income or multi-unit part of town. And you don't think that will negatively impact the real estate values of those whose properties are located adjacent or near the overlay. I find that highly unlikely. So again, we are designating as the overlay district an area that already has multi-unit housing on it. And I think hopefully, as you've seen through this presentation and some of the questions and answers already, the likelihood of increased density there is slim because of the complexity of the overlay district. Melissa, Jody, anybody else would like to comment on that?
I would just say on the affordability requirement, I would just reiterate that the state allows communities to include a requirement for affordable housing in MBTA compliant districts. Dover has chosen, in consultation with town council and various boards and the housing task force, not to include such a requirement. So we consider this a market rate development, even if it, theoretically gets developed. There is no requirement that affordable housing, as the state defines it, be included as part of that development.
Okay. Next question is, what is currently in the overlay area right now of single family housing? How is the value of those properties devalued? So right now, the property is made up of 56 56 townhouses in groups of 4. So there is no single family housing currently in the area that we would designate as an overlay district.
Carol, if I could address the question of value briefly, there seems to be an assumption in this question that properties would be devalued if placed in the MBTA zone. From what I've seen in my other towns, as well as some initial data that's gone on, what the MBTA zoning does is increase the potential development for any parcel that's within that zone. If you increase the potential development options for property, that typically increases the property values. It does not decrease the property values.
Thank you.
And I think what's really important, Carol, is this is a zoning bylaw. It's not a building bylaw. Our responsibility is to designate an area that's zoned for the MBTA Communities Act. It does not require that anything get built.
Thank you, Rob. That's a good point that we all have to remind ourselves of, and that we've been reminding ourselves of for 2.5 years as we've tried to develop this. There's a big difference between zoning and construction. Next question. I am curious about the potential number of condos or units that would be built, the likelihood of them being built, and therefore the potential impact on our schools, assuming it would mean some sort of increased enrollment. So, as we've talked about with the dimensional requirements and the fact that it's already built out, a developer would have to come in, acquire the 56 lots, use the dimensional requirements, take into account all of Dover's local rules and regulations on setbacks and placement of wells, water sources, placement of septic systems, setbacks of wells from septic systems, setbacks of wells from construction areas, and come up with a plan. So it's very difficult to assess what the numbers could possibly be, other than the fact that the bylaw requires that there's a minimum of 15 units per acre and a maximum of 16. Would anybody like to expand on that? Okay. Oh, and I should also mention that we have talked to the Dover-Sherburne Regional School business manager who took a look at the impact of the apartments at the Pastures, which is a 40B development that was opened up last summer on Route 109, basically around the corner from County Court. And we were told that there was no problem with the number of students that got spread out between Chickering Elementary School and then the regional middle and high school. And that with the decreasing school populations, that they did not feel that there would be any impact with an additional development if there's this kind of density were ever to occur. Next question. If the purpose of the requirement is to provide a space for multifamily housing, why are you selecting a location that is already developed and nothing can be built without forcing the current residents to move? I think I might ask Robin to discuss that in terms of the efforts that are being done through the Housing Task Force, just to address just that issue.
So I think it's really hard to know exactly what would need to happen to convert Tisdale to an MBTA Communities Act. But we also do know that within the town of Dover, there is a desire for us to diversify our housing stock. And what residents are looking for are more dense developments so that they can age in place in Dover. And that is one of the things that the Housing Task Force is looking into, is to basically understand what a more dense community could look like in Dover that abides by the rural character that we've all come to love and the reasons for people moving to Dover. There are many residents in Dover who would love to be able to get a smaller home and remain in Dover rather than maintain the large single-family homes with large pieces of land that they have. And that is something that we at the Housing Task Force are trying to address. And it does dovetail somewhat with the density requirements of the MBTA Communities Act. Did I answer that right?
I would
Carol?
just add one thing to that, Robin. The question presupposes that any development would force current residents to move. Again, nothing in this bylaw forces anyone to do anything. If people want to sell and move, they can do that as they can now. But there's nothing in this bylaw that forces the current residents of County Court to do or not do anything.
Right, and it also doesn't reduce the market values of anybody's home. You know, if a developer wanted to buy all 56 condominiums, they would have to buy them at market. So that, if you assume market is around 800,000, it's about $46 million before they even begin to develop.
So that sort of is a good segue to the next question or comment, which is that, so given that Tisdale is already multifamily, is this more nominal than practical effect? And, you know, obviously there are 176 other towns and cities in Massachusetts where developers could be looking to build MBTA housing without the challenges that they would face on our one overlay district and lack of infrastructure in Dover. So I'd say probably yes. Okay, Sean, I apologize if I missed your question here. As county court has existing condos, would those need to be removed to enable new multifamily units, or could additional units be built among the already existing condos? It would be highly unlikely that they could possibly rebuild within the current structure of those condos because of all the new setbacks and all the rules and regulations that we have. Melissa?
No, Carol, I was just gonna add, there are some open areas, for example, the tennis court and things like that, that potentially could, but again, these questions are sort of like the next phase of an actual development plan, which again, the town of Dover and MBTA Communities is strictly looking at zoning, and kind of looking at a lot of the questions, and Nina's, up to speed on this too. There's out of these 177 communities, some of them have put their overlays over existing office complexes, over existing retail areas. This is not a situation where overlays are consistently being placed on undeveloped land. So the fact that this is on a developed parcel is very common. It's probably more common than uncommon, especially when you think of some of the communities And they have train stations and commuter rail stations. And think about even the ones that you're aware of in your abutting communities. The areas around them are essentially all built up. And most of the land inside 128 is all built up. Most of the scenarios that people look at nowadays are redevelopment scenarios, which would be applicable in this particular case as well.
Nina, did you want to say anything else about that? No, okay. We were asked again, how much do the mentioned state grants add up to, and what would we lose if we were not compliant? How material is this versus the current tax rate? Perhaps we can just very quickly pull up the slide from Robin's presentation.
Right, and Carol, I would like to emphasize here that we looked back over the last 5 years and took an average of what the average dollar amount was for grants, and that was around 1.3 million. And in some years, we received $200,000 of grants, and in some years, we received $2.5 million in grants. And again, these are just representative of the past history. We really don't have a crystal ball, and we have no idea what grants will be available in the future. However, applying for grants and obtaining grants is one of the tools we have that allows us to minimize the increase in the tax rate. And that tool would go away from us, would be taken away from us. So again, back of the envelope calculation based upon this past year's fiscal budget, for your average taxpayer, we would basically be looking at an increase of approximately $600 a year to your tax bill.
Thank you, Melissa. It's slide number 6, the next one. There you go.
And when the MBTA Communities Act first came out, we viewed this as a threat. We now know it's the reality that the moment your town votes for non-compliance, grants that you've already received are taken away, and new items are added. For instance, just recently, Chapter 90 funds, which are the funds we get each year where the state contributes to the paving of our roads. And this past year, including supplemental funds, we were granted $600,000 in funds for the year. The state has said that those funds will be taken away from communities that are non-compliant. So it's no longer a threat, it's a reality.
Right. I would say, Robin, I would just add that as someone who has been dealing with a few towns that are struggling with this as well, the state list of grants that are potentially at risk here are growing and changing all the time.
Right.
So it's very hard to put a definitive answer on exactly how much is at risk.
Right, and that's why we felt the only way to be illustrative of what it could potentially cost was to look back at those grants that we know we would have lost and to calculate what the impact on your current tax bill would be. But it's not a guaranteed number. It may be higher, it may be lower. It's for illustrative purposes.
Okay, thank you. So let's see, from Amy, appreciate that the overlay is on already developed land. However, not sure I understand how a developer can buy the affordable units in county court. Almost by definition, the developer would have too many assets to buy these income restricted units. Nina, can I give that to you?
Yes, absolutely. So under 40B, there are typically a quarter of the units are income restricted, which means there's a deed restriction. that goes on the parcels, that goes on the individual units, that stays there, and they can only, as Amy's question suggests, they can only be sold to people who qualify under the income restrictions. It has happened before that 40Bs, usually after a 25 or 30 years goes by, can get redeveloped into non-40B developments. The only way for that to happen, Amy, as your question suggests, is that those deed restrictions get removed. The developer would need to get those deed restrictions removed with this state. So the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities would need to approve and authorize the release of those deed restrictions. So again, it's not an easy process, but it has happened in the past on occasion.
Okay, thank you, Nina. Next question by Norma. Will owners at county court be approached by someone or realtor asking if they wanted to sell? And if some do and some don't, how does this affect the unit owners who don't want to sell? I get that you are proposing a yes vote, which would be great for Dover residents, except those who live on Tisdale Drive.
So
I-
I can, sorry,
Go.
Carol, I don't want to step on your toes again. Anyone, the developer, in order to develop what is an existing condo, would likely need to acquire all of the units. So if it acquires only some of the units, it is limited in what it could do for redevelopment beyond just those units it owns. So the unit owners that do not want to sell, nothing happens to them.
Okay, thank you. Eric asks, I thought that since we have a housing plan, we can avoid 40B developments, but still need to produce or have affordable housing produced. Can the overlay district serve for both? No, it cannot. The 40B process is totally distinct from the MBTA Communities Act. The 40B process has been going on for decades. It requires cities and towns to have 10% of the housing stock as affordable. Dover is currently, I think, at 2.8%. And we have a couple of 40B development proposals that are before the Zoning Board of Appeals. But it will be a very long process for us to get to 10% of housing stock as 40B, but really has nothing to do with the MBTA Communities Act, which again is strictly zoning and not building, where 40B is building.
And it's also not affordable housing. It's more dense housing. It actually limits affordable housing, which 40B does the opposite.
So Sean says, realtors handling Draper and Schaffner sales right now are hearing others use the 40B and MBTA as factors to lower prices. There is no doubt it is lowering values. Again, this is all market rate housing, and I suppose that that prices will ebb and flow accordingly. County Court has been in existence, I think, longer than Draper Road and Schaffner Develops have been, or just about the same. So I think those rates are probably taking all this into account. Okay, Chris. It was mentioned that water, septic, and conservation considerations would still limit development in the proposed overlay district. Can you please comment whether all three of these apply to County Court specifically? Also, have you met with Aquarian given their plans to change water service for the town? I wouldn't want the zoning change to change their plans or make it easier for a developer if Aquarian does execute their plans. So let me take the second part of your question first and hand that over to Robin to talk about Aquarian and Dover and their water plans.
So are you going to take the first question or do you want me to address?
I'll do that after you do the water.
Okay. So first of all, I think there's a misunderstanding of what Aquarian plans to do. Aquarian has issues with water quality, and they need to build some sort of a purification system. So as an alternative to that, they looked at some other options, and they were also thinking into the future as to what could some of the other issues be with water, and PFAS came up. So they approached the Board of Selectmen and they said they would like to consider potentially going to Westwood and seeing if Westwood would allow them to bring MWRA water to Dover to their customers, because that would be less expensive for them than putting in a water treatment plant. Any such change in water supply would need to be approved by town meeting. This is not a decision that the Board of Selectmen can make. We went ahead so that Aquarian could have all its facts together and allowed them to go and talk to Westwood and see what kind of a deal they could get from Westwood to connect through Westwood to MWRA water. They have not made a deal with Westwood yet. We don't know if it's feasible, and we don't know what those costs are. In addition to that, they are also getting costs to build a water treatment plant. When they have all that information, which will be in probably a year or two, we will then have information sessions, and before any decision is made, there will be a town meeting where voters in Dover will decide whether or not this is an option they want to give to Aquarian. And that's where we stand. So Aquarian does not have a new water source right now, and it is probably 2 years away from them being able to bring something to town meeting.
Thank you, Robin. So the first half of Chris's question had to do with water, septic, and conservation considerations that would still limit development in the proposed overlay district. Again, the beauty of MBTA versus 40B is that all of Dover's regulations and local bylaws referencing conservation, wetlands, water, septic, all those things apply. So in that sense, it would be, they are limiting to what a developer can do as they design a project. Next question. Bruce, what happens if after the proposed overlay is accepted by the state insists that the area of the overlay be expanded to include all of that land to the right of the proposed overlay? So right now, we will be in compliance with the state law. And I guess they would have to change the law and put other requirements on all 177 towns and communities. Because once we're in compliance, we're in compliance. Nina, can you?
Yeah, Carol, the simple answer is the state doesn't dictate where the area needs to be located. So this is not going to happen.
Okay, next question. Whoops. From Carol. So are these units low income only? No, on the contrary, they're not low income at all. There's no affordable units in the MBTA overlay district. Is there a vote tonight or educational only? Thank you. So the planning board will be taking a vote after the public hearing is closed on making a recommendation to the special town meeting on September 29th. The citizens of Dover are asked to come to our special town meeting, 7 o'clock, September 29th.
Monday night.
Monday night at the region where we always hold our town meetings, to come and hopefully support this recommendation. So the planning board will be taking a vote tonight.
Carol, yeah, you should read Ms. Saylor's comments that she's made,
So I'm just trying to get
If-
to that. So
if you can.
for low income. 30 years ago, I worked. No, that comment about Framingham?
Yep, it,
I'm missing something on mine.
nope, it's somewhat nonsensical, but I think if you string it together, you can get the idea. This is public comment, so we can't pick and choose what we're responding to.
Oh, okay, I see. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, so there was a comment, hi, 30 plus years ago, I worked a company, I assume, and the co-worker's daughter, a waitress in Framingham, had a child. So that's the comment.
Yeah, it went on. I don't see where the other ones are now, but it went on before.
Okay, that's all I've got on my screen right now.
Yeah, I don't see the rest of those.
There's a question from Chris. Robin, we should talk offline as
Yeah, and I
mentioned.
was just sending him an email, and message to email me.
Okay, fine. So this was just somebody who wanted to talk to Robin as chair of the Board of Selectmen about water because he is a trustee of the Old Farm Road Water Trust. And they work with Aquarian on a regular basis. So at this, hi, please read the other thread. Carol, I can't find the other thread right now. My apologies. Would you mind retyping it?
Yeah, I can't either, Carol, Lisbon. I saw it up before and now I don't see it.
I don't see it
I
either,
did too. I saw it before too.
but I don't. No, it's not on the dismissed.
So we can wait for a moment, Miss Saylor, if you want to retype it.
So as we're waiting for Carol Saylor to possibly retype her thread, we're getting to the last of the comments and questions. So just if there's anything else anybody would like to share with us or ask at us right now, now's your chance. Otherwise, we're getting close to voting to close the public hearing. Ah, okay, Carol, thank you. So Carol, so the daughter won a lottery in Dover with her Brazilian cook boyfriend and won a lottery probably in Tisdale. So that's probably referring to the fact that that 40B units are basically bought by lottery with a third party that runs the process for Dover when 40B units become available.
Yeah, I think it's the Dover Housing Partnership.
These two were moochers and could not pay taxes. End of story. Okay, Carol, thank you. Are there any more questions? And let's just double check once more to make sure that no one has their hands raised.
It says there are 2 questions, but I think those were the last 2 you read that haven't been answered.
I'm looking at those and those have been answered. Those were
Okay.
Carol's. Yep.
Right.
I see nothing that's open and I see no hands raised. So going once, going twice. Okay, so thank you all for your questions and comments. They were great. They were informative for us. I hope our answers and the presentation were informative for you. And of course, we are always available between now and September 29th to answer any of your questions. You can get a hold of Melissa at the planning board office or contact Jody or me or Robin, and we'll be glad to spend whatever time we need to discuss this further with you. So please do not hesitate to reach out between now and the end of September, September 29th, 7 p.m. So I'm going to have a motion made to close the public hearing. Jody?
Yep, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing for the discussion of the MBTA Communities Act.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We'll take a roll call vote. Jody,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Carol, yes, and I believe Val is no longer on. So with that, we have now closed the public hearing. That means the planning board will now deliberate, and we will take a vote this evening. You're all, of course, welcome to continue to listen to our meeting, but we will be taking no more public comment. So with that, planning board members, Melissa, I guess the best thing to do would be for you to present to us the amendments that you discussed in one of the slides at the presentation, which differs from what we've already voted on, so we have to vote again.
Yes, Carol. To the chair and the planning board members, I prepared a memorandum dated September 3rd. Circulated this to council and the board members. This is also available on the website if anybody is interested in following along. And essentially, this covers the 4 revisions that I had discussed during the presentation in the slide deck. And again, it relates to the revisions to the earth removal section, ensuring that the special permit is not applicable in the overlay district, and that is reviewed as a by right activity as part of the site plan review. Also, we talked about the open space definitions, definition, and removing the word contiguous. We want to make sure that it's clear that all undeveloped land within the parcel boundary does in fact, count towards the open space. The inclusion of the 16 units per acre, I think, is probably the most profound revision that we're looking at as a community. What this will do is it will lower the potential number of units that could be located if somebody does pursue redeveloping county court. The current compliance model with no density cap is about 227 units. And once we place the density cap, the compliance model generates a figure of 159 units. And again, that is a mathematical Excel spreadsheet that is put out by the state. It is not a factor, it does not factor in other issues that were raised this evening, like water, sewer, infrastructure, and those types of things. The state has provided us with this model as sort of something that all of the communities, all 177, can put their parameters in and figure out if certain parcels of land and overlay districts, in fact, get them to their unit capacity. Again, here in Dover, our unit capacity is 102 units. One of the other revisions, which is very minor, was a typo on my end. When I submitted the articles to the Board of Selectmen, I noted that we were on map 26. We are in fact on 25. All the corresponding parcels that were listed have in fact been accurately portrayed on map 25. So that's a typo on my end. And again, looking at the bylaw itself, which has been in draft form for quite some time and still remains in draft form. It's a very basic bylaw. There are not a lot of quirky or intricate parts that you might find in zoning bylaws in different communities. The sections are very straightforward with a natural flow, starting with establishment and applicability, which is what you'll see in a lot of different overlay districts. We also include a purpose, very basic purpose. The definitions that I had spoke about earlier, multifamily housing, building coverage, lot coverage, and open space, as well as parking surface. So it's clear when somebody is looking at this particular overlay bylaw and wondering what do these terms mean, they are defined here within the zoning bylaw itself section. It does infer and make it clear that multifamily housing is allowed by right. That is the only permissible use in this overlay district. Nothing else. This zoning overlay district applies to nothing else besides if and when somebody wants to exercise their rights in the MBTA overlay district. Section E gets into the dimensional criteria and building requirements that I had specified in the slide and that you all have in your packets. Again, this tells us where a building's going to go, how tall can they be, how many parking spaces do we need, how much of the site can you cover. Again, very basic dimensional requirements. And again, making sure that these categories are similar to the categories that we currently carry in our other zoning districts for consistency and uniformity. There are also some landscape requirements, again, indicating to people where the buffers need to go, what type of surface landscaping we're looking for, walls, different things like that, design features, promoting the 50-foot setbacks, in fact, to be landscaped. Off-street parking requirements. Again, 2 to 2.5. There's an allowance in there for the planning board for guest parking if they feel as though that is a requirement or needed. And where parking would be located in proximity to the buildings, in this particular case, to the rear or the side, shielding them and screening them as much as possible. Then we get into our access requirements, which talk about curb cuts, maneuvering, sight lines, and subdivision roadways. Again, all very basic components of development. How do you get in there? And where is that access located to make sure that it's safe and adequate for egress and access in relationship to sight lines. And then we have some basic site design that talk about some maneuvering and parking areas, dumpsters, and mechanical equipment. So the other components that come along with every use, and particularly residential uses, where are those things on the site? Where are they located on the buildings? Are they screened properly? We want to make sure that that's all seamless and adequately addressed as part of any potential development in the future. And then, of course, lighting, always important to make sure that we regulate lighting, and the waivers, and then the section in which this bylaw is tied to site plan review. So a basic bylaw, but it includes all the components that would be needed if and when an individual or an entity decides to pursue doing something here at County Court. As I talked about earlier, and everybody is very familiar, County Court, that's our overlay district right off County Street, State Route 109. And while it isn't directly connected to transit, it is about 5.5 miles to the closest station, with access to the highway over a state route, Route 109. So that's just kind of the high level, Carol. I'd be more than happy to get into any detail specifically or answer any questions of the board members this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. So included in the package that went out was the actual bylaw, which Melissa just summarized. So are there any questions from any of the planning board members to Melissa about the actual bylaw? Or the amendments that are being suggested? Okay, well, seeing none, I think it's time to make a motion for the board to approve this bylaw in the overlay district. So do I have a motion? Thank you,
I've
Jody.
got one. Okay, so I'd like to make a motion that the planning board make a favorable recommendation to town meeting on the proposed zoning bylaw and zoning map amendment for the MBTA Communities Act that includes a new section 18550 by right MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District and the creation of a new MBTA Communities Multifamily Zoning Overlay District with the revisions discussed this evening as outlined in the town planner's memorandum dated September 3rd, 2025.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Katie. Are there any further discussions before we take a vote? Seeing none, we will take a roll call vote. Jody,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
and Carol, yes. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you all. We now have a final bylaw that we can take to town meeting in 3 weeks.
Hmm.
So as we've discussed, I urge you all to talk to your friends and neighbors and do a get out the vote effort to get folks to attend the town meeting on the 29th. We will have a part of we're sharing, I should say, the Board of Selectmen's booth at Dover Days on a week from Saturday. Melissa will be there all day. I'm hoping that many of you will be able to join her and the selectmen as well. We'll have flyers sort of summarizing the bylaw, showing the map. We'll also have some posters that Melissa, I was amazed when I was at the townhouse today. Melissa actually made these huge posters on our plotting printer in the townhouse. So hopefully we'll get some folks stopping by and can further explain why a yes vote is so important for Dover. So please let Melissa know when you might be available to help her out, so we can try to spread us out and have at least 2 folks there for most of the day. And thank you to the selectmen for allowing us to share their booth. I don't know what their giveaway is yet, but we'll take advantage of that as well.
We strongly suggest you get some bags of candy.
Well, they're already on sale for Halloween at all the stores, so they
Right. So,
can't go buying candy. It's all they're individually wrapped, right?
right, and and hopefully there will be more questions and, people, because clearly there still is a little bit of misinformation out
Yes.
there. There's
Yes.
still with everything we've done, there still seems to be a lot of confusion between 40B and the MBTA Communities Act. So.
And I think also some of the questions indicated tonight between the overlay district of current county court and the ZBA application for Tisdale 2.
Yeah.
My guess is that the comment about the Draper Road and the Schaffner values have more to do with Tisdale 2 than the overlay district.
Right, and I think a lot of them have to do with the unknowns,
Right.
right?
Yep.
I think if my memory serves me correctly, Foxborough designated Patriot Place as their overlay district. So again, it's like it's a zoning requirement. We designated an area, and if a developer chose to put in an MBTA community in there, it's unclear what all the steps would be. I think it would be somewhat complicated, but again, the good news is it would have to comply with the town's bylaws, all of them. So.
Right.
Yeah, we're gonna have a slide that's gonna be available that shows some of the locations that other towns have chosen as their overlay district to sort of indicate the reality.
Right, and I think your point was a good one, even though you put me on the spot, but we do constantly get comments about a desire for more diverse types of housing stock and smaller housing stock for residents that, their families have grown up. They just don't want a big house. They may already have another house. They're just not interested in the upkeep, but they love Dover and would like to be able to stay here. And what they do is they move to surrounding towns where they can get the smaller home.
Well, I think that's why I mean, the passage at 2 years ago, town meeting, 2020, three, right?
Right.
For the funds to hire a consultant to really look at that whole issue. And the support that we've received at town meeting for the ADU bylaw indicates just that, right?
Right,
There's
right.
absolute need for it. The MBTA Communities Act is not the place for us to address it. So I
Right,
think it's great that
I-
that's working in parallel in two different paths.
right, and there's even confusion with the desire for a more diverse housing stock where individuals refer to it as affordable housing.
Right.
It's just a smaller home, which by its nature, one would think would cost less. You know, people just don't want an 8,000 square foot home.
Right. So with that, I think we have spent enough time tonight on MBTA Communities Act. And we do have other items on the agenda, so I think we will move on to that. I see that we still have 12 attendees on. You're certainly welcome to listen to the rest of our meeting, but we will not be discussing anything to do with the MBTA Communities Act at this point. But thank you all for attending. Hopefully see you all on September 29th. And
Or at Dover Days.
or at Overdays, that's right. And I see Nina's already off. I was going to thank her as well. Okay, so we go back to our agenda for our meeting tonight. And the next item is a town planner update.
Town planner update. Thank you, Carol.
Is it anything other than MBTA Communities?
Couple things. Great discussion this evening and a lot of great information and continued great work here in Dover. Very quickly, going to be getting up to speed on the Green Communities initiatives here and filing the reports this year. They're having some upcoming webinars. I haven't previously worked on this particular initiative in the past, so I'm going to get myself up to speed and make sure we're in good standing there. A little bit of work left on MBTA, obviously tightening up the presentations for the special. I'm going to be working with Chris Costello, and he's got a whole list of different entities and businesses here in the town. We'll be hanging up some flyers in different places. I put some on the doors here at Town Hall, but want to hit up Carroll Community Center, DPW, Library, and then Dover Market. I'm going to ask the post office, just anywhere that people might have an opportunity to, if they're waiting or they have a break or we catch their eye. I caught somebody today looking at it when I was leaving the building to take a little break. And I did print these wonderful posters. I'm so proud of myself. I couldn't believe I did it.
I'm gonna check them out tomorrow.
Oh, they're amazing.
We're going to get them mounted. And I want to thank our DPW director. He brought over some very large sandwich board signs. So I might end up mounting some on those as well as having some easels. Really want to make sure that the information is available to people and that they don't have to wait around to approach a board. If I'm busy helping or discussing this initiative with a resident, just want the information to be available. We'll have the flyer there as well. Feel free to circulate that to anybody. OpenGov, our online permitting is getting hot and heavy, I guess I should say. And I'm going to be focusing on building out all of the applications for the planning module on that. So I've had a couple Zoom meetings, and Jason, the Board of Health Director, has been really great to work with, and our consultant. So I'm pretty excited about that. I think it's going to create more uniformity and make sure that people give us their requirements and what they need. So spending some time going through those modules and making sure that there's a sort of a checks and balances approach and opportunity for staff to make sure everything's there before we get to likely be a digital type of stamp from the town clerk. Always interested in making sure we're meeting our statutory requirements and timeframes with applications. So definitely something that's available and I'm looking forward to. I want to thank the Board of Selectmen for appointing me as the MAPC, Metropolitan Area Planning Council representative for the town of Dover. I have held this position in other communities through various periods in my career, and I'm excited about Dover. Dover right now is in 2 subregions, and my understanding is they've recently reached out to the municipalities. I'm in discussions with Mr. Blanchard on my preference is to be in 1 subregion and do a really good job than being stretched across 2 subregions. So more to come on that, and would obviously seek input from the selectmen and the planning board on which subregion they feel we fit in best, I should say. We got 3 new applications for next Monday night. We'll be meeting again, planning board here on Zoom. The agenda will get filed tomorrow. We have 139 Center Street, which is a pool. We have 51 Pine Street, which is a residential solar array. And we also have 201 Dedham Street, which is also a pool. So those will be on next week. And working with some people, there's some minor changes to 283 Denham Street. I'll be looking at that with a little bit of a closer lens over the next couple days. They shifted some buildings, doesn't look like really much changed. They hit some ledge. We finally have some movement, no pun intended, on the easements at Wilson's Way. So someone has reached out recently, and hopefully they could potentially even be of assistance with their neighbors, or give us a contact, almost at the point where if everyone's home, go over with the easements, bring a notary. We all know one and love one that works upstairs at the clerk's office, and just get this. It's hard enough to get these things done when they're relevant. Years later, they become more and more difficult. And recently was contacted by an architect working with Camp Hale. And they are interested in putting in a new smaller buildings with some composting toilets, a medic area, and a small area for counselors to huddle and break down beginning and end of the day. So going to be taking a look at that plan this week. Excuse me, and looking at the bylaw. I'm almost positive they're in an official or open space zone. So I'd have to go back and look and see, obviously talk to Carol and scrape her memory, what approvals we do have, if any, there, and what type of restrictions are on them. But don't hold me to this, but I'm almost positive we're going to be planning board recommendation, and then the selectmen will likely be the site plan authority in this particular zoning district. So more to come on that, but these are sort of things that are coming across my desk, and felt as though they were important to share. Thank you.
All on top of the MBTA work that she's been doing.
And the posters.
And the post. Melissa, I just say on Camp Hale, because it's news to me as well, that we've been working for many, many years. There's a whole CR
Okay,
that's on 1,100 acres at Hale. And my understanding is that it still is in the process of getting approval at the
Right.
state level.
okay.
But you might want to talk to Mike Blanchard about it, because it could be that part of that CR, assuming it ends up being all approved. I don't see why it wouldn't be. I think it's just some, nitty things here and there could impact the planning board's response to the buildings.
Thank you, Carol. And if there's any other information that folks think is relevant for me, they sent that over on Friday. I didn't have a chance to look at it today, but we'll be pulling that up and, compiling some notes to best. They've offered to come down and meet and go over it with me, so I may take them up on that offer as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Amy Moot was very involved as well in
Right.
this CR, and is always a good source of information when it comes to that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you, Carol.
My thought was that maybe we have to wait for the CR to be approved before we could move forward, because I believe the draft that I saw, there were some restrictions on what could be built.
Typically, yes. And then
Yeah.
Well, they had carved out an area.
Right.
Yes, they did.
And within that area, there were also
Right.
restrictions. So we want to make sure that whatever, which I'm sure they know what they are, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
maybe even ask Nina if we should wait.
Yep.
Yeah, the CRs are taking some time up at the state.
Right.
Yeah, those don't turn around quickly. And there's a lot of them now, especially all the towns that have exercised and adopted the Community Preservation Act. If you buy any open space with those funds, you need a CR. So their workload, I can imagine, up at EOE AA
Yeah.
is bountiful. So
Yeah.
I will do my I typically check all the different jurisdictions, decisions. I check the registry as well. Sometimes there's other restrictions that aren't necessarily put in place by the town of Dover. So I'll gather all of that, check with Amy, check with Mike, and see where we are on the CR.
Yeah, Amy gave us an update at the Open Space Committee meeting whenever last week, I guess. And my impression was that it wasn't only an issue of getting through the state, that there were some little things that needed to be resolved as well.
Okay.
So, yep. Okay, well, thank you for that. We haven't forgotten about our promise to the town that we would look at site plan review bylaws for May. So once we get through the MBTA and once Melissa's further along with the online permitting needs, then we'll be able to focus on site plan review. So I do ask you, just so that we can, because time tends to fly, to give some thought to site plan review, the bylaw itself, and what we've all learned and thought about as we've done these site plan reviews over the last couple of years. And we have some coming up next week, just to refresh our memory as well. And to get to Melissa, your thoughts as they pop into your head about aspects of the site plan review bylaw that are problematic, areas that seem ill-defined, areas that we should be focusing on, things that should be taken out, conflicts that need to be resolved. This is an opportunity to take a bylaw that we've known for a long time needs a tremendous amount of work, and it's really the foundation of what we do. So as you could just get those to Melissa, so you don't lose thought of those until we actually get down to focus on it.
Got it. Thank you.
I have nothing from a chair update, other than let's get out the vote.
And I know we're working with Chris on that, so.
Let's be one and done.
One
Yeah.
and done, exactly. And
Although, it just amazes me with all the education, all the information out there, even making the presentation and addressing some of the issues, how complex this is, that if you're listening to it for the first time, you don't always get it.
Right.
right. Yeah, and it's an interesting one because it's incredibly complex.
Right.
But on the other side of the coin, it's actually incredibly simple.
Right. But
It's
how
a
do you
law, and
get
it's going to
there?
cost us a hell of a lot of money, right?
Right. And we're not being alarmist or dramatic. And the thing is, with those estimates, it's all we could do is just look back over the last 5 years. There's no guarantees that grants will be there, but you are going to lose the opportunity for some new grants. We just can't tell you exactly what it is.
And yeah, we'll have for town meeting some data on how many of the 177 are in compliance, have voted, and it's just a matter of going through the state and those types of things to make it clear. As we've said all along, the advantage of 12/31/2025 is that we can learn from about 140 towns that have had to do it before
Yep.
12/31/25. So
Right, and the chapter 90 is all new, and as Nina said, every week there are more grants being added into those that they'll take away from you from non-compliance.
Right.
And the scariest part is that you then aren't prioritized. So it's going to take years and years and years before you can get back that funding. And in
Right.
the meantime, you still have to fix things or replace things.
And meanwhile, you know, our ability to get grants is impacted by the fact that we are a very wealthy community, that we really haven't made tremendous strides in 40B.
Mhm.
It's not that we have the best reputation at the state level when we're asking for money, for other reasons as well. So that we don't need to add something else to that bucket of Dover's asking for this. So, yeah. Well, great meeting tonight. Thank you all. And we'll see
You're
you.
all choked up, Carol.
Yeah,
That's
see you next Monday. And then see you on the 29th as well. Busy month for us.
Yes,
Busy for Melissa.
I will be there on Saturday, 10 to 3. I got my notes. Buy candy or you'll be an outcast.
a sunscreen and a hat.
And you know, if anyone's in the area, I'd love to say hi, come by. And I'm really looking forward to literally hitting the green of Dover and really trying to be helpful and be a resource. You know, I think that just kind of listening to the questions, and zoning is something that people just, it's difficult for people to understand, and they're looking for the catch, and there really isn't much of a catch here. It's complex in that it's a law and the guidelines are complex and the compliance model and all that, but all the technical stuff is really one side of it. The practical side of it is it's one district. The bylaw is very straightforward. And there is really very, very, very little risk to the town of Dover putting this overlay district in place. So hopefully we can on Saturday try to engage some folks, create some relationships, smile, agree to disagree, but the main point is to share the information and the education as well. If anyone's watching this on replay, there is so much information on the website. I don't think I've read it all yet, and I've been on there probably about 50 times. So please take time. And I also put my email in the chat. I'm on the town website. Please, please, please reach out if you have any questions here in the town of Dover. Thank you.
And I would also mention too, I know Jody knows this, that Melissa has been in touch with the attorney that handles the county court HOA in providing some material, because he has been asked to write a summary, I believe, for the owners. So that's a good sign too. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting at 9:03?
I submit that motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Bill. And Katie.
Yes.
And Jody.
Yes,
And Carol. There we go. Thank you all very much.
thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good job, Jody.
Oh,
Yes,
thanks,
good job,
Robin,
everyone.
likewise.
Robin,
That's a great
thank
job
you
as
again,
always.
Robin,
Thank
for
you.
participating tonight.
Oh, my
Bye-bye.
pleasure. I just want us to be one and done.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Good
Fingers
night.
crossed.
Good night.
Good
Good night.
night.